down to my, just was real in a really tough situation where adversities and bad luck constantly happening to me daily, and have no one to, so isolated and alone, have no one to help me, and I could talk with and things like that. And I was just seeing if maybe I could have a talk with my mother and things like that, talking with her, and then as I was just about to talk with her, and she started just complaining all these things about my life and things like that, and then I just start, in tears, and then just got on my knee and start crying and like bang my head against the floor, and it's like, so anyway, I felt, well, looking at that scene, I felt maybe my mother's like, taking revenge. Maybe back then that scene, my father beat her up, and maybe she's taking revenge on me, because my father beat her up back then. Like I was saying, I didn't see what happened. I didn't intend to see anything. So anyway, I felt like I just kind of like, I don't know. I really didn't have enough time because I'm in my situation, so I didn't really have enough time to do an investigation on my parents' life. And I felt to see what really happened, why my mother wanted to take revenge on my father and things like that, what's going on in their lives, for her to want to take that step to have revenge on him and things like that. I don't know if is it really even if taking revenge or not. Like I just don't know. I just didn't have that kind of time to travel to where they used to live, back in Asia, and to do an investigation to know what's going on. And like I was saying, I was just really that day I was it was really, I have no one to turn to, and I was adversity and bad luck constantly happening to me daily, and I just want to see if I could, maybe have a talk with my mother, and that was. So she just start complaining at me, and I mean, I should have expected that to happen, because throughout the years, whenever she'd see me, she would start complaining at me. It felt maybe I should have expected that to happen. She never really gave me a chance to talk with her. It's like, why did I even bother doing that? Kind of like in a way throughout the years, whenever she see me, she would make complaints at me and things like that. It's like. So in a way, I should have expect something like that to happen, but it's just at the time, it was just like, I just have no one to turn to, and the bad luck and adversity constantly happen to me daily, and it's like, again, so for now, I just didn't have it. I'm gonna keep it at I didn't have enough time to travel to the Asia continent to do an investigation on my parents' life. It's like how to know what's going on. Like, is it my mother's taking revenge on my father and things like that. It's like, because I was in a situation at the time, because I was in the situation, so I don't have that time and money to travel to the Asia continent to make that investigation on my parents' background, to see what's going on. Okay, so anyway, pretty much, I felt. Anyway, my father passed away, and on December 2011, and he felt like while I was living with him, I saw like he's really isolated and alone and everything, and my mother means her situation. Not, I mean, also I mean, maybe she might not be as isolated and alone like my father because she, but like like she's not really. I don't know. Like I just felt maybe I don't know, like, cause I felt looking at my situation, like I've been taking on leader responsibility and duty throughout my life, throughout years of time, and also I have journalism, like I'm a journalist of the beachcomber, so I have the journalist background. So, seeing that, throughout the years of my life, I have been taking leadership responsibility and duty, and also I have journalism background. So, like, felt like, comparing my life with my parents' life, I felt like, people would, you know, say that, I have better chance of the world would look at me than my parents because I have a more responsible background. It's like I'm taking on leadership responsibility and duty throughout the years, and I have journalism background, things like that. I felt like the world would take that step, to look at my life than my parents' life, like because so I felt looking so I felt I have a better chance that the world would look at me than the world would look at my parents and things like that. Because like I was saying, because of taking leadership responsibility and duty throughout the years and also have journalism background, it's like so I felt that's the reason. It's not just like some preference that the world like me more than my parents and things like that. It's based on those facts and evidences. At the same time, I just don't really know exactly what if I don't know. Like I just didn't have that time to do a thorough investigation on my parents' background to really know what's going on in their life and things like that. but I'm just basing on the facts and evidence I have. I felt like I could be argued just because, especially like what if the USA, just like me, also didn't do a thorough investigation on my parents' background. What if that's the case? Like I felt then the USA would go with you know with what I'm my argument. Kind of like that the world would look at me instead of my parents and things like that. It's like. Anyway, for now, I'm just keep it at just stop get carried away. Stop get carrying away that the USA would do some kind of investigation on my parents. It's like, they are totally neglect. They no one, not even have look at them. Have even say hi to them or hello to them. Why did I get carried away of someone's gonna do an investigation on my parents? Why do I keep get carried away with these sort of things? It's like. Like I'm saying, throughout the years, I felt like I was like the only person who, you know, show a little bit care to my father. Like talking about his just briefly, even though not much. Briefly there was a few times I briefly talk about my father's autobiography book. And briefly talking about him. I felt like I'm the only person who ever did that to him. It's like. I'm gonna continue while the background activity is going on. So anyway, well, I don't know, like maybe, well, anyway, but it just back on. I'm gonna continue while the background activity is going on. Back on 2006, I saw a few journalists came to our house to interview my father about his autobiography book. Like I'm saying, I just don't know about who else did care about him. I just don't know. I didn't do an investigation on him, but based on my observation, I was the only person who did that. That was back in 2006, which is how many years ago? Right now it's 2026, so that's about 20 years ago. That's way back then. Maybe there were a few journalists who came to our house, but that was back in 2006. That's about 20 years ago. It's like. I remember like my father was making a comment at me. It's like, you know, those journalists afraid to enter our house because you are in the house. It's like why would my father even say that? It's like. Okay, I'm just. Well, the light's turned off, so I'm gonna have to go back and turn on the light. Okay, pretty much turning on that light, you could see me better in the camcorder. Okay, so anyway, I I just I don't know why he made that comment back in 2006. I don't know. Basically, I think he was just saying that maybe cause back in 2006 I was doing some conditioning, like exercise conditioning to, you know, build some, keep myself fit and everything. So I felt like maybe he was just saying that, I have, you know, done enough exercise that, the journalist afraid to enter our house already. Kind of like in a way, I felt maybe that could be the reason he made that comment at me. It's just like the journalist would, afraid to enter our house. Because of you and things like that. It's like. Okay, in general, I just want to keep it. I just have to. Okay, basically, just ignore that if you don't want to hear it. Just kind of like in a way. Basically, I just want to say that no one really like. That was back. That's just 20 years ago. I just want to point that out. And in other words, no one really. Basically. Alright, so as for me, I have 9 years no feedback on my PTTS blog, so that could also argue, I'm just, no one also look at my PTTS blog and things like that, it's like, I'm not that much different from my parents, they're not the only one that got neglected and things like that. That could be the argument pretty much, that looking at, because I have no feedback on my PTTS blog for 9 years, so that could be the argument that, I'm not that much different from my parents, that, that because my parents got neglected and no, not having feedback could argue that I got neglected also, it's like, okay, so pretty much it's the domestic affairs, domestic affairs are just the living together and sharing affairs, domestic affairs are living together and sharing affairs, which is you could call like diplomacy. You kind of get away, just domestic affairs and diplomacy, and just the everyday life. It's like I felt that it's already so much for me to handle that I am very stressed out and everything. And Okay, so anyway, that's just, domestic affairs and living together and sharing affairs and 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 the everyday life, just the daily life, kind of like in a way, the daily life, domestic affairs, living together and sharing affairs in the daily life. Well, no, maybe I felt maybe at the beginning, when I don't know, I really don't know what really happened. Did all the people in the world, and I don't know. Like, I just don't have the answer to this. If I do have the answer to this, I would have done much better right now and things like that. I really don't know what's going on. Like, but yet I'm vibing the argument that that's how the world been living their life since day one. That they just focus on those three things, since the beginning, since the day they were born, kind of like in a way they've been just focusing on domestic affairs, living together and sharing affairs and the daily life. Since the day they were born, they've been focusing on that. That's why they're so well informed and know what's going on and everything, it's like, I mean, as a journalist of the Beachcomber, should have saw that, kind of like in a way. Okay. Okay, so it's almost out of battery. So I'll probably on the next episode I'll start the step-by-step PTTS timeline from the beginning again. Maybe this time, like, because I just barely got started on it and kind of really rushed it, and so on the next episode I would start from the beginning again. And okay, so since this camcorder is about to run out of battery, so I have to end this session right now. So pretty much, and anything else I left out, I will talk about it in the next episode. Okay, so thank you for joining PTTS. Thank you for following PTTS. I'm gonna end this video in 3, 2, 1.